The Super Bowl is in the books, and before the entire Dynasty world gets overhyped with rookie season, there is a little bit of a time just to sneak in some more veteran talk. I'm joined by one of the best and brightest in the industry, and the guy with the best voice in the industry, let's be honest, Anthony Crente, is going to walk me through some Dynasty buys that he is looking to target right now. Anthony, thank you so much for coming on. How are you doing today?
Doing great, Rich. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the compliments. Very, very kind of you. Greatly appreciated. This is like the eat your vegetables show, right? Like before we get the rookie candy, eat your vegetables with some veterans.
Absolutely, and what better time to do it? Like it's, I feel like I have this conversation every year. It's like we go through the cycle, there's value rise, value drop, and it's like every time at this time of year, I look at the veterans, and then I go into keep trade cut or different trade calculators, whatever, and I'm like, is that really where people are drafting these guys? Is that really where the value is? It is ridiculous how cheap you can get some of these veterans. So yeah, very excited to talk through the guys that you've kind of identified and picked out as players that you want to talk about. We're going to start at the top though. James Conner, he is the first player you have identified. Really interesting season. The first time in his career he's played 16 games, a career high in touches. Obviously got that sneaky little contract extension at the end of the year. Why is it that you're targeting James Conner for kind of 2025 and beyond?
Yeah, it is kind of crazy that it was the first time we've seen him in 16 games, especially when it feels like we've seen him forever. Like James Conner is the quintessential, like quote unquote boring player, I think, in fantasy. Like nobody really cares about him anymore. But 236 carries for just under 1,100 yards, 1,094, 8 touchdowns, but 47 catches for 414 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Um, the opportunity still knocks in Arizona, I think. I personally wasn't the biggest Trey Benson believer. I'm not the biggest Trey Benson believer still, so I don't think there's a huge threat to immediate workload. Arizona was 11th in run plays per game in 2024. And he was really efficient with the touches. I mean, he was first in juke rate, second in evaded tackles, seventh in yards created per touch, finished as the RB11, RB15 in points per game. I think that you can kind of pencil in pretty confidently, I feel like that same workload in 2025. And maybe it diminishes a little bit after that. But with most veterans like this type of player, I'm really looking at it in like a 1, maybe 2-year window anyway. Like if I'm going out and trying to acquire a guy like James Conner, I'm doing it because I feel like it's a piece to contend for a championship in the short term. So given the price tag, I think he's the perfect kind of guy that blends talent, opportunity, and like probably or hopefully pretty repeatable metrics from last year.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this pick. I love the suggestion of James Conner. It plays perfectly into how I target the running back position in Dynasty. I consistently, anytime I put rankings out or talk to anyone about values, everyone's like, "You're too low on elite running backs. You're too low on elite running backs," and it's because for me, I don't want to put too much of my kind of capital, too much assets into the position when I can go and get similar competent production for a fraction of the cost. And it's like, yeah, okay, someone like James Conner, it might be 1 year. Hopefully it's 2, but it might be 1 year. But I can almost
Mhm.
guarantee that James Conner is going to give me solid RB2 production for what, a fifth of the cost of one of these elite expensive running backs. And it's like, I don't need to pay up
Yeah.
for it because I can get him so cheap.
That's exactly like my thought with it too. Like as fun or as, sexy as some of the young, really elite fantasy guys are, it's like, well, would I rather keep my multiple first round picks instead of trading for, one of these super high end guys, like as fun as they would be to have, or go spend a second round pick on a guy like James Conner? All we have to do is look at last year, right? Like the old running backs, the James Connors, the Aaron Jones, like the guys that got left for dead both on the trade market and in startups. But it just feels so much more practical to kind of harvest or keep that capital and invest it in either, wide receiver or however you want to spend it when I can spend mid-round capital on guys like this that I feel like can really push me towards championship gold in the short term. But Yeah, people get bored of the old running backs, man.
But it feels like if you're lacking a running back for your dynasty roster and you're looking at it and you're like, I can go and spend multiple first round picks. I can spend huge amounts on an elite running back. And if something happens, someone dramatically gets drafted to an uncertain situation, someone randomly gets injured. We see it time and time again with these, running backs are one injury away from falling down a cliff.
Yeah.
And you've wasted so much of that capital and those resources on that one thing. And it's like, actually, I could just move basically, some shrapnel out the back of my pocket for
Yeah.
some running backs like James Conner. And there isn't a risk. If James Conner ends up having a bad season, if James Conner gets injured, I've still got those elite draft picks. I've still got those assets that I can go out and find another replacement. Like, for me, it's not a case of am I picking between Jamal Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, Saquon Barkley, or James Conner. It's am I
Right.
picking between 5 James Conners
Yes.
and one of those elite running backs? That's how I'm viewing it in terms of how I'm looking to go and trade for those sort of guys.
Yeah, 1,000% agree.
And we're looking at values. So look, you can see on screen here, I'm significantly higher than consensus. I mean, keep trade cuts got him as a mid second. I mean, they've got him as running back 24 overall right now. DLF is even lower. You can get him on DLF for a late second round pick. Are you comfortable paying those sort of prices right now for James Conner?
Yeah, absolutely. On a contending team, I'd pay, even if I had an early second, I'd pay an early second for him. But a mid to late second, I think, is a no-brainer for me if you need a running back that you can kind of count on for production in the short term. It feels too cheap almost, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just to highlight, I've got him. He's back to back with Derrick Henry in my ranks. I've got them the
Yeah.
same trade value. Derrick Henry's a top 12 back on most
Yeah.
platforms right now, and yeah, I'd quite happily move from Henry to Connor. So yeah, that is a very nice veteran buy to get us started here. Before we move on to the next one, though, if you are finding this for the first time, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Once we're finished with this show, we're going to be diving into the rookies. Mock draft season is upon us. And of course, we're going to be breaking down every single rookie that you need to know for those rookie drafts. The next guy you want to talk about, though, Courtland Sutton, Anthony. What is it about Courtland Sutton you feel that he is a good buy right now?
I feel like Courtland Sutton finally found himself in the right kind of situation last year in Denver. Like the emergence of Bo Nix helped a little bit, but highest target volume of his career, second best touchdown total of his career, most receptions in a year in his career. Was first in air yards, sixth in deep targets, ninth in red zone targets. He's got a clear chemistry with Bo Nix. Older player, final year of his deal, and it's his age 30 season. But kind of similar to Connor, I think that we can kind of not necessarily bank on, but project pretty comfortably that same kind of production in 2025 for Sutton. Um, yeah, I think him and Bo Nix, I mean, Denver could look to go wide receiver in round one, but at the point of where they're picking in the NFL draft, I'm not expecting a guy that comes in right away and necessarily takes all of the Sutton market share. And I think the chemistry with Nix is a big deal. He finished as wide receiver 15 last year. And I think that he's not a guy that you want to pencil in on your team as your quote unquote wide receiver one or really your two. But I think if you can, roster him as your third or fourth best option, the ceiling far outweighs that and could certainly outproduce the value.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, is that you're not having to pay up wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, even wide receiver 3 cost for him right now. He's
Yeah.
going as a wide receiver 4 in most circles. That's going to drop even further once we add in rookies and things like that. Yeah, last season he was a league winner down the stretch. Go on screen
Yeah.
there. Week 8 to week 18, he was wide receiver 7 overall. Like, that is an incredible stretch. I'm not concerned about. Yes, there's talk of this contract situation. He's wanting more money. He's in the final year of his contract. The Broncos have now got a bit of free space to move around. Russell Wilson's coming off the books. Like, I think they're going to look after him. I think they're going to get him done. I don't expect a big, massive extension, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of years added on. Probably allows them to push some money into future years rather than keeping it all in this year. And yeah, I think he's going to stay put. He's kind of the complement to this receiving weapon. You think you've got Devon Vele, who, a 59-year-old rookie, looks pretty good as that sort of power slot type. You've got Marvin Mims, who I don't think is ever going to be a high volume, high snap share receiver, but I think as a gadget piece, as a movable weapon, he's fantastic. And I still kind of like Troy Franklin. I'm hopeful that he's going to be able to develop this year. So yeah, even if they add options in, none of those players are the prototypical X that Courtland Sutton is. And I think that, as you said, he's got great chemistry with Bo Nix. He blends well with where Bo Nix wants to put the ball. So Sean Payton can talk about wanting his joker as much as possible, and he wants this movable piece that he can put in the offense. I still think this offense is going to run through Courtland Sutton. And yeah, you're talking 2-3 year windows. I'm very confident that Courtland Sutton is going to be fantasy relevant and outproducing his price for those next 2 years.
I think so too. I think you hit it with the contract extension. I think it's a perfect scenario of, I think he's worth more to the Broncos than probably anybody else. So I think they smart to figure it out.
And they've talked about trading him for 3 years.
Yeah, it never happens.
Like I think they're happy just keeping him. I've thrown together some trade offers. These are pulled from real life trades, some calculators, different places. Apparently, Courtland Sutton's exact value is the 2025 203. Where are you going there?
I'll take Sutton. I guess context is important, right? But like if I'm playing to win and not, just amassing capital or playing the long-term rebuild game, I think at 203, if you're, desperate for wide receiver help, you're probably getting a guy that you're not penciling in for the Courtland Sutton workload, at least not in year one. I'll take Sutton over the 203.
Yeah, I think at 203, you're talking 25% chance that a guy has a top 24 season in his career.
Right.
I'd take the over on a 25% chance that Courtland Sutton's a top 24 wide receiver next year. So yeah, definitely give me Courtland Sutton there. And then we got two others. So I got Keon Coleman and the 306, Najee Harris. Are you taking Courtland Sutton over both of those?
I'd take Courtland Sutton over both of them. Yeah. The Najee uncertainty, like see where he ends up, but I don't know that he's going to find himself, if it's outside of Pittsburgh, in a spot better than Pittsburgh. And Keon Coleman, best case scenario, you're hoping Keon Coleman eventually turns into a Courtland Sutton, right? But that's a big hope. So I'll take Courtland Sutton over both of those.
Yeah, I'm a little bit tempted by Keon Coleman. I still think there's a little bit more in there. If I was rebuilding, if I was looking that longer game, I could see that deal. That's probably about even for me. But the other two, I'm taking Courtland Sutton over both of those every day of the week. We're going to move across now, though, Anthony, to the quarterback position. And now you've picked one of my one true loves, Geno Smith. Why are you a Geno Smith believer right now?
Look, we're a couple Jets guys. Didn't work right for Geno here in New York. I'm always rooting for Geno. He's another guy, though, that it feels like kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit this past season. He threw for 4,300 yards and completed 70% of his passes. The touchdown to interception ratio wasn't great, 21 touchdowns and 15 picks. Seahawks hired Clint Kubiak. I like that hire. I think the New Orleans offense looked pretty good early on in the season. They got things going when Rashid Shaheed was really thriving as a deep threat there. So I think with JSN, DK Metcalf still there as viable weapons, they hopefully find some help on the offensive line in the NFL draft. But look, Geno was third in deep ball completion percentage, ninth in pressured completion percentage, third in clean pocket completion percentage. Just an accurate quarterback. Like the interception number doesn't feel really indicative of how he plays. So I think it's fair to expect that to balance out a little bit more in 2025. And I know there's been some loose talk about, Seahawks, if they look to move past him, but he's going to play there for now. The problem is, who do you replace Geno Smith with if you're Seattle, right? They don't have a real viable alternative option. So I think in that situation that he's in now with Clint Kubiak coming in as offensive coordinator, I like a quote unquote bounce back year for Geno, even though he finished as the quarterback 13 last year. You know what I mean? Like people poo poo that, but you could do worse.
Yeah, it's I honestly I feel like every time I hear anybody or read anything about Geno, I'm like, am I watching a different player? Like, I just don't get why everybody's so willing to cast him aside. Like, everybody keeps talking about how the Seahawks are going to move on from him. They're going to bring someone else in, and then every time I hear Mike McDaniel speak, I'm like, he really likes Geno. He
Yeah.
really wants Geno. Like, there was an interview done yesterday where they were asking him about Geno and the potential of moving on, and he looked genuinely confused, like why the team would look to move on from Geno Smith. It's like, this guy is playing like a top 12 quarterback.
Yeah.
You don't find those growing on trees. Trust me, as you said, we're Jets fans. We understand how difficult
Yeah.
it is to find a quarterback. He's playing great ball. I think last year I didn't see a single offense that didn't help out their quarterback less than Seattle did. Like, the
Yeah.
run game, the pass game wasn't linked at all.
Hmm.
What they were asking him to do was carry this entire offense. There was no kind of easy wins for the quarterback. There was no play action. There was very little motion. It was, Geno Smith, you are going to sit in the pocket and
Yeah.
you are going to make difficult reads and make difficult throws all across the field. And he did it. And then
Yeah.
it's like, oh yeah, now we're going to go and find someone else to get better. It's like, no, what they need to do is they need to realize that you can't just draft fifth and sixth round picks at Garden Center and expect them to be competent NFL players. They need to go
Yeah.
and spend some money or draft capital on the interior of the offensive line. They need to turn the keys over to Geno Smith, force feed the ball to Jack Smith and Jigba, and watch this offense bloom. Like, I'm so excited about the Clint Kubiak hire. I think this could be a fantastic offense, and I wouldn't be shocked if we're sitting here and Geno Smith has had a top 6 fantasy season next year. Like, it's well within his range of outcomes.
Oh yeah.
And the fact that I'm seeing the prices quoted, we're going to come on to prices in a sec, Anthony, but it's honestly absolutely gobsmacking to me. I always sit here and I say, any quarterback who has a secure job should be worth a first round pick in Superflex drafts.
Sure.
And let me just bring you on to the current values right now. So Keep Trade Cut have got him worth a late second round pick. DLF have got him worth an early second round pick.
That's
It's
a
absolutely
smash.
madness. You
That's
can see my values on screen. I'd pay a mid first for Geno Smith right now.
Yeah.
And I can go and buy him for a late second. It's absolutely mind blowing. And I think this is the best veteran buy you could have identified.
Yeah, it's an absolute no brainer if you could pay a second round pick for Geno Smith, because like you said, last year was tough, and he still nearly finished top 12, right? So the ceiling, I totally agree. It's well within the range of outcomes that we're talking about, a top 6, even top 5 finish if it all goes right for him in Clint Kubiak's offense. And I 100% agree. Like, if you're playing Superflex and it's a reliable starting quarterback, I don't know how I wouldn't take less than a first. You know what I mean? If I was selling. So look, you've got quarterbacks or you don't. And if you could go get one that just threw for 4,300 yards and probably has another good year in store for himself this season with some pretty good weapons around him and a new play caller that should help him out a lot. And, you know, to your point, hopefully they either invest some either draft capital or actual capital on the interior of the offensive line to keep him upright.
Please.
Yes,
Please.
please. Yeah, I think a mid to late first makes a lot more sense than a second round pick. I would have no problem paying a mid first if I needed quarterback help.
Yeah, absolutely. Whoever's entering these values on Keep Trade Cut, you know, I really hope that I can play in your leagues because, yeah, I feel like if I could go out and buy Geno Smith for a late second, I'd probably be at 100% rostership. It feels absolutely criminal, those prices.
I'll be sending some offers tonight.
Absolutely. Before we move on to the final pick, though, remember, hit that subscribe button. We are closing in on 3,500 subscribers. You will not regret it. I said we'd give you one at every position. Of course, we're going to talk about tight end. Now, Anthony, you may need to convince me on this one. Zach Ertz, why is he a buy right now?
Zach Ertz is a buy right now. Kind of like we said with Courtland Sutton. I think if Zach Ertz is going to play football, I think he's going to play football for the Washington Commanders. I think it's a scenario where that relationship, I don't know that it's better for him to be anywhere else. So if he's going to play, I expect it to be there. It felt like such a nothing burger signing when they signed Zach Ertz. It was like, oh, they signed whatever's left of Zach Ertz. And then, 66 catches for 654 yards, 7 touchdowns, 18 red zone targets in 2024. Provided or like a nice, reliable safety valve kind of outlet for Jaden Daniels. I really liked Ben Sinnott, when they drafted him. So I still think he could be the heir apparent there. But it wouldn't shock me at all if Zach Ertz comes back to do this thing one more year with the Commanders. And if he does, and with the variance at the tight end position every year, he's nearly free. Like nearly free to acquire. He's such an afterthought, both in startups and in trade, that I'm willing to throw the dart and see, okay, do we get a repeat where he was tight end 7 this past year? Can we get another top 10 finish out of him? He was tight end 10 in points per game. But I mean, still, you're talking about it's a tough position to nail right. And you need some touchdown luck to go your way. But if you can throw the dart on somebody real cheap attached to a young superstar quarterback, I think there's worse gambles to take than if you want to gamble just a little bit, a little sprinkle. Not saying go crazy, but a little bit on Zach Ertz.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. I get it. I do get it. Like,
it doesn't feel good though.
I just don't think. I don't think he's a value add at the position, and I do wonder if I think Washington are going to look to add weapons. I think they're going to be quite aggressive adding weapons this offense, and I do wonder if they view tight end or kind of that position as a place to go out and maybe spend more draft capital after spending a second round pick on Zinit last year. I just find it hard to look at my roster and think, how many weeks am I going to start Zach Ertz? And it's like, I get what you're saying. He was a top 7 tight end. He was top 10 in points per game. Like, he had a great year. But how many weeks did you actually feel comfortable starting him this year?
Yeah, look, I get it. It's not going to feel great. But with the way tight end seems to shake out every year, hopefully you're not going in with just Zach Ertz, right? Like, hopefully you got a guy that's a little younger, maybe presents a little more upside, maybe has a little more stability long term. But if that guy gets hurt or if that guy disappoints, maybe you have old reliable Zach Ertz in a pinch when you need him.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe if you're chasing upside, maybe if you're going in with Chika Okonkwo and Jatavian Sanders and those kind of high upside risky options, maybe you need to settle it down with a little bit of Zach Ertz. And I guess the one thing that does kind of bring me back in is when I pull up the prices here, and you joked about him being free. I mean, this is essentially free, isn't it? Like 2025, 406 is where his value is. You can trade him for Jahan Dotson, who I reckon is on plenty of waiver wires right now. Luke McCaffrey and the 512. Like, are you taking Zach Ertz over all of those guys right now?
Yeah, because it's all free. It's like free money. And like I said, ideally I'm pairing Ertz with somebody that maybe has more upside. But I think there's something to be said about having a guy, especially if you're playing tight end premium, that has at least some kind of floor. Maybe it's not the craziest upside, and maybe there's plenty of weeks where you're like, oh, I'm going to start Zach Ertz. But in a pinch, man, the 406, Luke McCaffrey and the 512, like that's nothing.
What I'm surprised by is that Luke McCaffrey is worth less than Jahan Dotson.
Seriously.
Apparently that's real. But that is it. I love all 4 of those buys. I'm definitely going out and spending some capital to go and acquire me some more Geno Smith shares. But it's always a pleasure chopping out with you, Anthony. Remind everyone who is watching, where can they find you and where can they find your work?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Rich. Always love hopping on with you. You can find me on X at Dynasty Drive. The podcast is the Gridiron Drive, co-hosted with my good buddy Pete. So you can find it all on all your regular podcast platforms. You can find us on YouTube at the Gridiron Drive, and co-host the Dynasty Big Board podcast on the Rookie Big Board feed with Ryan Searfoss and Eric Adams. So plenty of rookie talk coming as rookie talk heats up now with combine season right around the corner. We'll be diving into all of it all over the place.
Beautiful. Well, as I said at the top, Anthony's one of the best, one of the brightest. So make sure you go and check out his work. You will not regret it. We'll be back very soon. We are kicking into rookie season with some mock drafts and some rookie profiles right around the corner.